Based on customer feedback, we've added the ability to schedule a recurring checklist. Let's look at what that means. First, if we go into Setup and we go into a checklist template, we could go into the daily checklist and we could click on the clock icon, which is new. What this does is this lets us schedule the checklist. Let's go down through the various schedule functionality. First, if you were to put in an email address here, what that functionality does is it will send an email to you or to the person in the email address whenever a checklist is created. You could probably, in most cases, leave this blank. The next field down, the next create date. Maybe you want to start the checklist on the 4th of October. You can go ahead and set whatever your date is. Next up, you have the next create hour. What this does is this says I've got my date picked and I want this to be scheduled at 3 a.m. or whatever time you like. Next up, you can set a repetition schedule. So in our example, we're looking at a daily checklist, so we could just leave this at daily. If you had a weekly or a monthly, you could go ahead and pick whatever repetition schedule you like. Next up, we have close out open checklists. Imagine you had a really busy Monday and a checklist was started by the system, but your team members didn't get a chance to finish it. So when Tuesday rolls around, the system is going to create another daily checklist. What this functionality does is it will just go ahead and close out the checklist from Monday automatically and then start the checklist for Tuesday. That way you don't have two different daily checklists hanging out in the system. So that becomes a pretty powerful and recommended setting, because ultimately you don't want to have 20 different daily checklists open in the system. The next option is to enable or disable the checklist. So obviously if you want the scheduling functionality to be turned on, you would want to have the enabled option checked. The next two fields are really reporting options that show when the checklist was last run and what the result of that run was. So once you're satisfied, you can go ahead and hit save. Then when we go back to our checklist, if we were to open up an existing checklist, we now have functionality that shows us that the checklist was started or created by the system. Additionally, when we come into the system and we mark an item as complete, it works pretty much the same way it always has, and we can see the percentage complete here. So at this point, if we had turned on the ability to close out an open checklist October 5th, if this checklist was not completed, the system would automatically close that out and start a brand new test car quality check. There's also additional functionality within Open, and this is pre-existing functionality. If we go back to Setup, let's go back to the checklist template, and we'll look again at the daily checklist. This time though, let's look at the Edit Settings or the gear icon. Here's a functionality that you may or may not have turned on for your checklists. The On Complete email. So what this does is it can send an email to your manager or to the owner when a checklist has been completed. In our opinion, what makes the On Complete email so exciting is now I can get an email that lets me know that a daily checklist, for example, was completed. So imagine that daily checklist on Monday that didn't get completed. Now I'm going to get an email and I can know that this didn't happen. So it provides a new level of accountability that the system didn't previously provide. So for example, if I look at this email, this is a typical On Complete email. This checklist was closed by the system automatically. It had a score of 0. 0 of 2 items were ever completed. So now I know that I can follow up with the team members and ask them why the checklist was not completed. This is a new level of accountability that previously did not exist in the system, and we think that you'll enjoy that. This has been a very brief overview of the new scheduling functionality in Wash Systems Open, and we appreciate you taking the time to view the video.